The following program is from WNET 13.
Good evening. I'm Bill Moyers, and this is South Central Florida, between Lake Okeechobee to the north and the Everglades off to the south. Our story here is not the politics of Florida's primary, but one about people, the people who work this land. Down Highway 27 a few miles is Belglade, where a local farmer once told Edward R. Murrah that we used to buy our slaves, now we rent them. This is some of the most lush farmland in the country, and its place in the economy of America has always depended upon the availability of cheap labor, farm workers who, while gathering the food for our table, often ate less well than those of us they fed. A year and a half ago, Chet Huntley reported from here that reforms had had little effect on the way those farm workers live and work. But this week, there's a new voice in town and a new word, huelga, strike.
Very simple movement. It's a movement of workers struggling to better their conditions.
The arrival in Florida of Cesar Chavez and his United Farm Workers Union is more than an event. It's a symbol of the fact that an era is ending in American agriculture, an era in which, as one man put it, we not only rented our slaves, we imported them. He was referring to the men who cut the sugar cane that sweetens our coffee and tea, men who have flown up here every year from Jamaica. The future is arriving on the farms of Florida, but the past is yielding grudgingly. And that's part of our story tonight on This Week. The condition of farm workers in this country is hardly a new story. We've known for a long time that the food we eat comes from the hard labor of men and women who toil long hours for little pay. That's one reason people have been leaving the farms in droves, letting machines take over the drudgery. If the hot work and low wages of a field hand is an old story, however, what's happening here in Florida is new. After 10 years of organizing in California, the United Farm Workers Union has come to Florida. And last week, the union announced a victory.
Today, a 3-year agreement was reached between the Union Negotiating Committee of the United Farm Workers and Coca-Cola Company Foods Division regarding representation by the Union of grove and harvest workers employed by the company in Florida.
The contract calls for adjustments in vacation schedules, sick leave pay, compensation rates, minimum assured hours of work for hourly paid employees, and various other benefits.
The contract with the Minute Maid division of Coca-Cola is a first in Florida farming, and it came rather painlessly because Coke was worried by its image, particularly by the bad public relations it suffered 18 months ago when the Chet Huntley report on NBC showed America the conditions of the workers in Minute Maid's orange groves. Said a company vice president, "That's not the kind of image Coca-Cola wants to be associated with." The contract signed last week will affect 1,200 of Minute Maid citrus workers and will raise the pay of some of them as much as $1.50 an hour. It also provides holidays, vacations, health insurance, and a guaranteed minimum income for many of the workers. If these seem unusual concessions to be awarded to farm workers, whose constant condition has long been the uncertainty of their fate, notoriously at the mercy of the weather, the seasons, and the boss man, that's just a reflection of how farming in this country is changing. There likely wouldn't be a place for big labor on these farms if the big businesses hadn't got there first. Coca-Cola, one of Fortune's 500, is hardly the Farmer Brown of your first-grade primer. The other big growers in Florida are set to resist Chavez, where Coca-Cola yielded to him. For his part, Chavez has said publicly that the higher cost of labor and fringe benefits will put Coca-Cola at a tremendous competitive disadvantage unless the farm workers can organize other Florida farms as well. His immediate target is right over there, at the gates to the Talisman Sugar Corporation on the edge of the Everglades. Talisman is one of the largest sugarcane producers in Florida, with about 1,500 seasonal employees. Back in January, about a third of the 450 men who operate the company's tractors and heavy equipment walked out. Their complaint? Low pay and poor working conditions. They turned to the Farm Workers Union for support and got it. The Talisman walkout becoming the first united farm workers strike in Florida. Many of the drivers are Cuban refugees, like Rogelio Lawrence. Driving a tractor for Talisman was the first job Lawrence was able to get in this country.
Well, you work 12 and a half hours a day, 7 days a week, and you get no overtime pay.
What do you get an hour?
$2 an hour. You don't get no benefits whatsoever, none. Medical, retirement, no benefits.
What led you to the decision to take a drastic step like this?
Well, the conditions, the working conditions, the low pay, and the treatment from the foremen.
What kind of treatment?
Well, they think that, you know, they don't have respect for men. You know, you do something wrong and they don't just come and say, look, you did this. Even if it's an accident. Anything you do there, they just say, hit 27.
What does that mean? Hit 27?
Hit 27 is the road.
Oh, the highway.
The highway that leads to Miami or Belle Glade.
That means?
Yeah, that means you're fired. It means you're fired.
The Talisman strike has its first martyr, a college girl who was helping on the picket line the morning of January 25th. Strikers say she was killed on this spot, accidentally, by a Talisman truck. The company says none of its trucks was involved, but there's no doubt that 18-year-old Nan Freeman is dead. The Florida Highway Patrol is still investigating the incident. This strike, like the civil rights movement of the 60s and the California grape boycott of a few years ago, is attracting white, middle-class student support. Nan Freeman went to school in Sarasota. This picket is a college student in St. Petersburg.
And the more people that join us and show that they support farm workers and support giving them human rights, the better chance we have of Talisman listening to us.
Well, why did you get involved in this? It isn't really your fight, is it?
Well, it's my fight in the sense that I like to fight for people. And the farm workers are people. That's sort of a difficult question.
Right.
But it means a lot to me.
The man who owns Talisman is William Pauly. That's his car. The union claims that a majority of Talisman drivers want union representation. Pauly says that 325 drivers, a majority, have signed statements they don't want a union. An election would determine who's right, but the National Labor Relations Act does not apply to agricultural workers. The labor situation at Talisman is complicated by the fact that the company, like other sugarcane growers in Florida, uses foreign workers, Jamaicans, to cut cane. 1,000 Jamaicans were hired for the Talisman harvest that ends this week. The union is not trying to organize them, but maintains that the Jamaican situation is pertinent. They're allowed into the country only after the U.S. Department of Labor certifies that domestic workers are not available to cut cane. The Farm Workers Union claims that the growers just don't offer enough money to attract American cutters. Talisman guarantees its cane cutters $1.85 an hour, with piecework rates pushing the hourly wage over the $2 mark. The company claims it couldn't attract Americans to the cane fields even at twice that price. Cane cutting is dirty, mean, and dangerous. These stalks are tough and thick, the sun's hot, the machete is sharp, and this fine powdery dust that rises from the muckland can cover a man's body in seconds. As if that weren't enough, there's the soot to contend with. The cane fields are burned on the day before they're cut to clear away underbrush and snakes. A few minutes of wielding the machete and the worker is covered with sweat and choking soot. Cane cutters work from 7 o'clock in the morning until about 3 every afternoon, 6 days a week, 7 if they want to. The more cane a man cuts in that time, the more money he earns. The average is $16 to $17 for an 8-hour day. Lunch is eaten in the field, paid for, as are the other 2 meals each day, by paycheck deduction. The Farm Workers Union has alleged that Talisman exploits its cane cutters, combining what the union regards as inadequate pay with poor living conditions. That kind of talk makes Talisman owner Bill Pauly angry enough to let a This Week crew onto his plantation. We were the first reporters allowed in since the strike began, and Pauly personally conducted a tour of the workers' living quarters. At 75, Bill Pauly is an unreconstructed individualist. He earned his first million by age 22. He's run airlines in China and Cuba, built factories on 3 continents, and served 2 presidents as a diplomatic troubleshooter. He took over Talisman 8 years ago when it was in bankruptcy, and he's proud of the company and of the way he says he treats his cane cutters.
Now, there are toilets and showers on both sides. And every man here gets at least 1 hot bath a day. And all of them have improved their standards of living to a point where now all of them appreciate this type of living, this type of food, this type of accommodations, which they do not have at home.
Have you formed any conclusions about the characteristics of these workers, what kind of people they are?
On the whole, they're all country boys. They come from the country rather than the city. And we find them to be religious, men who have had a good family background, but have earned very little money. Unemployment in Jamaica is very high. Opportunity to get a job is very small. But he can make enough here to carry him through the rest of the year very comfortably at home.
You find them pretty frugal?
We have helped them to be frugal. We've taught them to make their money and save it and take it home in order to live better. Some of them have been able to buy little farms and things of that kind at home.
If Jamaican unemployment makes American cane cutting attractive to these islanders, and they do come to do it, there are advantages for the employer too. He gets a stable workforce for one thing. The Jamaican government helps with the recruiting each year, and replacements are supplied if some men drop out or get fired. One inducement for a Jamaican to stay and to work well is the fact that the cost of his chartered flight to Florida is deducted from his pay until halfway through the season. He gets that money back if he stays that long, and his return transportation is paid for only if he completes the season. Talisman Labor Supervisor Bill Noley, an ex-policeman, finds the Jamaicans well-disciplined and easy to work with.
I'd rather work with them, and I had equal number of Americans.
Why?
I think they're easy to get along with, and I don't. They're more honest, I believe. I'm an American. I have the privilege to say that.
They like to work?
Oh yes, they're hard workers. Well, you have a few in this bunch that just don't want to do the work. You'll find a few that won't get along with the other Jamaicans. So those you have to get rid of, because you do have to have order in the camp, you know.
The Farm Workers Union has charged that order in the camp goes too far. Cesar Chavez's cousin, Manuel, who's in charge of organizing Florida, claims that Talisman keeps its Jamaican laborers virtual prisoners, not allowing them into Belgrade, 23 miles away, and not allowing anyone to visit them. Bill Pauley admits that visiting is restricted. It is, after all, company property, he says, but hotly disputes that the Jamaicans are prisoners. Pauley maintains the company provides free transportation to Belgrade every 2 weeks, and that transportation is available at other times. He came with us as we visited the cane cutters' recreation room to talk with them. How your work is here. How long have you been here?
3 months since a week.
This your first time?
Yeah.
How's it been?
Pretty rough.
How do you feel?
We try our best to make it, but it's rough.
Hard work? You been at chopping?
Yeah.
You going to come back next year?
Maybe. Not as soon.
Last week, Manuel Chavez, who is organizing the farm workers, said that all of you were being kept prisoners here. Do you feel like a prisoner here?
At times.
Can't you leave if you want to? You can't?
There are taxi cabs here. There are taxi cabs out here every night, though. Anybody wants to go can go. And they take men in any night they want to go. And that's well known here, and I own the place, and I know that's regulation. Many don't want to go. They came to make money, and they want to stay here.
Will you come back?
No, sir, I'll come back.
You won't? Why?
Price is very cheap. Too cheap.
You think the wages should be higher?
Yeah, should be high. Should be double.
Double? Is there any way that can be changed?
Yeah, I don't see maybe in the future.
Do you think that many men from Jamaica will want to come here in the future?
Yes, they would like to come, but see, that's the same position. If they come and sit here, you see, they wouldn't have to come back again.
Sure. I think that they would come if they knew what it was like.
No, they wouldn't come.
Why do you think 85%? I'm Mr. Pauly. I own the place. Why do you think that 85% of the boys that come here ask to come back each year? And I've tried to provide the nicest camp of any camp in Florida. And I believe if you went to see the other camps, this would be the best one in the United States. And I've told the cooks, we've got 11 chefs. I've told the cooks to feed you anything that you want, in any quantity that you want. My cooks are Jamaicans, and they tell me they're cooking it with a seasoning that you want, that Jamaicans want. So we try. We may not succeed, but we're trying to give you what you want, not what we want you to have. It's what you want.
Yeah, don't believe really that everybody would want that. Yes.
Well, then the cooks are to blame, the chef. And I think our chief chef is a very fine man. And I think that he wants to give you what you want. And if you're not getting what you want, if you would tell him, we will change it.
Does it trouble you that you're in an industry which is so important to the country, to people, food production, and yet it does depend upon what some people call cheap labor or low wages?
No, it isn't. I disagree with that. I think this is a high-wage industry.
Do you think that you could ever satisfy the men who work here or the public?
Well, it's like everything else. Even when I was in the Army as a young man, and the people were griping all the time. The soldiers were griping. They were never satisfied with either the food or the sleeping quarters or anything else. But I'm sure you've looked around here yourself today, and this is a country club, really. And no better facilities, no matter how much money you spent. You couldn't provide any more than you're providing here now.
Is there any chance that the farm workers will enlist the support of the Jamaicans in their cause?
No. They cannot become involved, or they'd be sent back to Jamaica right now.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that in your time you'll ever see Cesar Chavez's union organized here at Talisman?
At Talisman? I doubt it very seriously.
And you're determined to stick it out?
I'm determined to stick it out because I believe this is in the interest of the sugar industry that I do.
Mm-hmm. Those men who were at the gate this morning, you don't agree with their arguments that their conditions are not good?
I completely disagree, because it's been so falsified to date that anybody who impartially looks into the facts will disprove everything that they state. In fact, we know for a fact from the people we've seen, and we've taken pictures of it, we've got quite a few Castorites in the picket lines.
In the union picket lines?
Right, sir.
What do you think their motive is?
Disrupt American industry, do anything they can to hurt the United States.
Do you have any evidence for that?
I think that our staff, and if you want to talk to my general manager, who was in prison, in Castro's prison for 2 years, that he and the others that were in Castro's prison that are working here can identify quite a few of them.
We interviewed Pauly's general manager, Miguel Severa, separately. He said he has his suspicions of Castro infiltration, but has no first-hand evidence. Have you seen any men that you knew from your days in Cuba were identified with Castro?
No, I have not.
In Miami, this week's Martin Clancy talked with Cesar Chavez.
He made a charge yesterday that his men have spotted Castro agents on your picket line.
That's ridiculous. It's just plain ridiculous. All the people there are his workers. They've been working for him for, several years. In many cases for quite a long time, But I suppose this comes because at this point he's probably very hurted us because of the economic pressure. But it's ridiculous. Those are the unfortunate ones, the unfortunate incidents that we're getting to in trying to organize workers. We'd very much like to meet with him, and I'm sure that if we could meet with him for a few hours, we might be able to resolve the issue. It's not as big as it seems. Never is. But How can you resolve it? You can't even get to where you can speak. Sure. But
No, French.
I'm hopeful that he might change his mind. He might do it that way.
How would you compare the plight of the Florida agricultural worker with those in California?
Well, I think it's the same. It's a mistake to say that the California workers are better paid than the Florida workers. I don't think it's true. I think it's the same. Now, I can say that the Coca-Cola contract is a very good contract, and it compares with our best contracts, and if not even better than some of our contracts in California. But to say that one state, that California pays higher wages or better conditions, I don't think it's really true. Really, when you look at the situation, these men and women work very hard to feed the whole United States and other parts of the world. But when they're through with their labor, they haven't got any money to eat themselves. You know, that's ironic. And we're trying to change that so that they will be able to keep a little bit of what they produce.
There are other ironies in this story, pointed out by visits to Talisman and surrounding plantations. One of them is that despite the hardships of cutting cane, the physical labor, the soot, the barrack-style living, and the pay that is less than half that of a Detroit auto worker, despite all that, Jamaican cane cutters live better and have more protection than many domestic farm workers. This housing for Jamaican cane cutters at the U.S. Sugar Corporation, like that at neighboring Talisman, is superior to that enjoyed by many Americans who cut celery, harvest oranges, and pick tomatoes. What's more, it's free. For most other field hands in Florida, that's not the case. This public housing project that many agricultural workers call home comes complete with outdoor privies. They're not picturesque or pleasant. Federal and state housing standards for American farm workers are similar to those governing the cane cutters' quarters, but the difference is enforcement. While federal and state inspectors struggle to keep track of the substandard housing of many domestic farm workers, the Jamaican government sends representatives into its workers' camps at least once a week.
Basically, our job is welfare, looking after the welfare of all the workers from the West Indian Islands on this labor program. Before any worker enters a camp, it is closely inspected by the liaison staff. Facilities for bathing, washing of clothes, sleeping facilities, and the general appearance of the camp in itself. Whatever we feel is necessary to be repaired, we are never stopped by the employer. He always goes ahead and does as we request.
While he's in this country, the Jamaican cane cutter is covered by workman's compensation and by off-the-job accident insurance. In Florida, the domestic agriculture worker is not. The Jamaican is guaranteed a minimum wage of $1.85 for each hour he cuts cane. The domestic agricultural worker is guaranteed a minimum wage of only $1.30 an hour. The workers in this salary field make slightly more than that.
You've been doing this kind of work long?
Long time, at least.
How long?
Oh, about 10, 15 years.
Every season you come out and you cut celery?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Go that package.
What do you do out of season?
When the season go down?
When there's nothing to cut.
Sit down.
Sit down?
Oh, now the summer's kind of dead. That's why I go up north, pick up again. Because everything be right up north. I've been doing this since I was able to tow one cabbage. I have, really, with my father, because he do this kind of work.
How long has he been doing it?
Oh, all his life, most.
So you're pulling in money and your father is pulling in money?
And my mama. Yeah, my mama and my brother. He on the tractor guy on the tractor, my brother.
What are the working conditions like?
What you mean?
Well, the pay, the hours.
$16 a day.
For a 10-hour day?
10 hours, yeah.
Right. How many people do you have to support with that kind of money?
4.
4 people?
5 with myself.
Do you live in Belgrade?
Yeah.
What's the housing situation like?
Bad.
Rent high. Yes, she did a while ago and have to sit down all summer. No work.
That was kidding, the rent. $25 a week. See the place. It ain't worth $25.
There's some talk of a union for agricultural workers. You heard much about that?
No, I haven't.
I read a little piece of it in the paper.
Do you think it'll ever happen?
I wish it would. I really do. Because we really need it. We poor people have a hard time trying to get through. So I'd be interested in it.
Yeah, but suppose it meant a strike.
Well, if it did, and if it hooked me in, I'd be glad.
Go on strike, what good that gonna do? You don't get nothing to be on strike.
But I don't believe the union go on strike, unless they go on strike with the work. And then the people wouldn't have to have the strike. Because you see, they wouldn't have nobody working. They'd have to do something then.
The confrontation between Cesar Chavez and the men who own this land is likely to be long and bitter. The growers see the union as another enemy, one more adversary along with drought, frost, and fluctuating prices to threaten their survival. But $16 a day for a 10-hour day, which is what these celery pickers earn, is hardly sharing the bounty of the harvest. That's Chavez's main argument. The growers answer that they can't afford what Chavez wants. The small farmers in particular claim with justification that they would be forced out of business. But how about us, the well-caloried majority of Americans who buy what the laborer harvests and the farmer sells? Most of us say that the price of food for our table is already sky high, that we can't afford to pay any more for it. But for all of our talk about government handouts and subsidies, we've willingly accepted the subsidy of sweat from the people who work in these fields. The U.S. Department of Labor estimates that if the wages of farm workers were double and the whole increase passed along to the consumer, the difference would be 1 or 2 cents for each head of lettuce or dozen oranges or pound of celery. 1 or 2 cents. I'm Bill Moyers. Good night for this week.